Welcome to On the Square. I'm your host, Mykal Kafi, and also the subtitle is Health, Wealth, and Self. I do this intro all the time. I hope you have the patience to hear it over and over again. And I got Health, Wealth, and Self from the rapper KRS-One. So I didn't come up with it. I heard him say it, and I just embrace the concept. The most important thing is your health, because if you're chasing wealth and you're sick, then all that wealth is going to go into the disease care system. So you're going to use that money to spend on dealing with your health issues. Also, it's funny that most people that have health insurance file bankruptcy. And so the health insurance can help when you have nothing, but when you do have health insurance, depending on how chronic the disease is, it might not make a difference. And that sounds negative, but I don't mean it to put it negative. What I do mean is the Congress, the federal government, have the best health care for their members. But working class people, the majority have a cap on what the insurance company is going to spend on treating you. And when you go over that cap, you're on your own, survival of the fittest. So again, if you're chasing wealth, you have to have the time to accumulate the wealth, which you need good health to have that time. And then the other component is self. So you have a knowledge of self. So that's pretty much understanding human natures, natural law, divine law, commercial law, all that stuff is a knowledge of self. Again, repeat my name, Mykal Kafi. I'm the host on Welcome to the Square. And this particular show, or the majority of the show, covers current affairs. So I might not cover on a particular episode current affairs, but the majority of the work is going to be what's going on in people's lives. So you're talking about economics, health, education, things, the climate, things like that. So going into what I focus on is working on yourself. So that's probably my biggest, I don't want to say advice, but let's call it a suggestion to help you navigate being in the United States, just working on yourself, and just being the best person you can be without doing any harm to anybody else. Work on yourself. And when you feel comfortable with what you have done with yourself, then you move on to your family. You always want to help family members that appreciate your help. And then you go into the neighborhood, or what some people call community. I don't believe we live in a community. I believe we live in a fractured network of neighborhoods. And I got that from Dr. Claude Anderson, so I didn't come up with that either. But I think he's accurate on that term. Now, when you're expressing yourself and talking to other people, these are some things that I follow. Avoid using name calling. I enjoy calling people names, but I usually don't. But in the back of my mind, I want to do it. I want to call you a name. I do enjoy it. But if you're trying to get somebody to understand where you're coming from, or you're trying to help somebody, then I don't see name calling helpful. Also, profanity. I listen to some people that use profanity nonstop. I don't get bent out of shape because they're very informative, But for me, I would cut down or don't use profanity at all. Because if I can't say it in front of your grandmoms, or I can't say it in front of your child, then why say it at all? So I understand that some people use it for effect, but we say too many things to cause somebody to get emotional. And I just don't think it's a good way to get your point across. And also the use of the N-word. So name calling, or even typecasting or stereotyping, I lump all that in name calling, profanity, or the N-word. I just avoid it. And you go much longer. A little bit of my background is that I don't belong to any organized religion. I don't even like saying the belief system. I call it a know system, what you know. I would call it functional spirituality. And functional spirituality, that definition is pertain to what is known, we call science. And what is unknown, we call it spirituality. So it's the opposite side of a coin. So when I'm dealing with functional spirituality, it means that it can apply on a physical plane. So you're dealing with spiritual stuff, but it can be applied to the physical plane. And I can't give you a good example. Every time I think of an example, I'm thinking of you reap what you sow. So that might not be a good example, but that always pops in my head when trying to give an example of being spiritual, but on the physical plane. But I'm pretty sure somebody will let me know a better definition to apply pertaining to a known system, or what we're used to calling a belief system. Also, going on politics, I vote for policies, not for parties or personalities. So I have voted Democrat, I've voted Republican, and I voted third party. So I'm not loyal to any of these groups. I think they're all terrible, but there's individuals that's good in each of these groups, and I have voted for those ones that I'm thinking that they're really trying to help the working class. But because of the money in politics, and you owe favors and things of all that nonsense, I just think that the system today is just corrupt, and is gridlock, and is dysfunctional. Moving on to individuals that I like to study, read, or listen to. Glenn Ford is one. Dr. Claude Anderson is one. Chris Hedge is another. Ralph Nader. Some of these people are getting up there. So if you don't study some of their stuff, they're not going to be around much longer. Calvin Michaels, which is a young person, so as long as his health is good, he's going to be around for a long time. Sister Soldier, Professor Richard D. Wolf, Dr. Amos Wilson. So some of these people have passed. Some of these people are extremely old, and a few of them are still young, I think in their 20s. Now, some recommended books are Black Labor, White Wealth. Again, this is from Dr. Claude Anderson. Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington. When Work Disappear by William Julius Wilson. I think that book came out in 1996. Great book. Yes, it's an old book, but it's a great book. Black Reconstruction in America by W.E. Du Bois. This book is old also. And I don't have the date in front of me, so I kind of don't want to guess, but it's old. Moving from, these are just a couple of books. There's a lot of books you should examine and get information from. Also, I suggest traveling, but traveling again is tricky now because there's so much things happening when you go overseas. So I would say be careful and do your homework when you do travel, unless you have family at that location that you're going to, or you know somebody that's going to be your wingman or wing person to take you around. Just don't randomly just go to a new location, don't know what's going on. Even though you have the State Department give you little briefs, but I won't even count on the State Department briefs to have you navigating a new country. So just do your own homework also. Also, I would recommend joining an organization. So in the past, just putting myself in that situation, I have been members of organizations that I'm no longer a member of those organizations, but I used to be. Today's is so hard to find one that fits what you're trying to do or you're trying to address in this environment. So I don't really have one off the top of my head for you to join, but I'm pretty sure if you look hard enough, you can find one that you can join and contribute to society. Okay, but don't do too much. You still got to work on yourself and you still got to help your family, but you definitely should join an organization. Let me see if I can remember the quote. I'm a paraphrase from Muhammad Ali. He said, servant, being a servant, I guess that's it. Being a servant. I'm trying to remember that quote. Serve is the rent that you pay to exist on earth. So I might miss a couple of words because I haven't looked at that quote in years, but I think it's a powerful quote from Muhammad Ali. You can Google it and it can clear up the words that I missed on that quote. I also believe, I shouldn't use the word believe, but I also feel that we live in a post-truth society. And what I mean by that term is that in this society, emotions is more important than facts. So people will say stuff to get a rise out of you, get you emotional, and not deal with the factual part of the statements. And it's difficult because there's so much information overload. I've spoke to a person that I know, a associate, and I got a statistic, and she looked up the same statistic and got a different number, different response from a different group. And you're gonna find that. I got two different groups, which I ended up getting two different numbers, and then she went to another location, got another different number, three different numbers for the same question. So doing research is tough because you're going to the ones that you think is have credibility. They're have proven that their work is accurate, or they don't have a hidden agenda, or they're not paid off by the people that you have a problem with. So if you're looking for information on fuel, and then you go to a fuel company for the report on that information, that's going to be biased. So now you got to look at multiple sources and do fact checks on those reports. And you might want to call a couple of experts, and you also want to try to get as much information on the topic also. So it just makes it boring, and you're in a rush. I'm not saying that you have a short attention span, but most people are in a rush, and they're worried about their situation. I don't want to say you're selfish or your own issues, but you're worried about that. You're worried about keeping your job, keeping your pension, keeping your house. You're worried about do you have retirement funds? You're worrying about your children, you know, and making sure that they're good. You're worrying about your relationship, and you're worrying about your environment. Is if your house is depreciating? Are you in a floodplain area? Wildfires, tornadoes, hurricanes, blizzards. So you just got a lot on your plate. So it's tough to do because most of them are in survival mode. I don't want to say that we're living paycheck to paycheck, but we are. You got reports saying that if you get in trouble, the average American can't scrape up $400. And if they can scrape up $400, they probably have to liquidate their 401 plan or any kind of investment plans and cash it in to help with that emergency. So that's what we mean by paycheck to paycheck, that you just don't have savings, or you don't have assets that you can cash out quickly to pay for that emergency. So that's just a terrible situation where you and I bet I didn't write it down. I'm gonna try to go off memory. Oh, I have it right here. I did write down. 10 years ago, United States had 500 billionaires. Today, there's 2,500 billionaires. And I don't even think that number is accurate. I think it's close, but it's not accurate. And another thing is how they're deciding how do you call somebody a billionaire, because some people are billionaires on paper, but they're not liquid. They don't have, if they had to cash out, it would take a minute for them to get that amount of money to pay for whatever they're trying to pay for, like a private island or something like that. So I'm not necessarily sure how they're calculating how somebody is a billionaire. But I did notice, even if that number that I gave you is incorrect, I did know a rise in billionaires. I would suggest financially that you checked some of your investments. If you got because you don't know if whatever fund that you're in, you didn't put that investment together. So you might have Tesla in your package. And so you want to pay attention that what's dropping in terms of stocks and bonds. Even the bonds, U.S. saving bonds and all that, you might want to check all that stuff, because things are is unsure. And now I don't want to set the fire alarm, but things are not as reliable as it used to be. Everybody would put money into government bonds because they were so reliable. Now things are shaky. So I would definitely go down to your laptop and look at your investment and see what's going on, just in case something slipped by. Here I want to I gave this example a little bit earlier. I want to a little bit talk about where I got that information on where I was having a debate. Well, I don't know if I want to call it a debate, a disagreement with a colleague on doctors. You have, I looked up that the average U.S. doctor lives 51 years. So I'm like hesitant that how a doctor is going to tell you how to live more healthy when they're only living 51 years on average. But I got that information from the Bureau of Healthcare Workforce. They did a report called the State of U.S. Healthcare Workforce. And that's where I got that number. But I also got the number, which is different, 56 years, from a book called Doctors Don't Guarantee Their Work. Unfortunately, I don't remember. I have the book, but I don't remember the doctor's name. And he came up with 56, and he's a MD himself. He came up with 56 years that the average doctor lived. But this book has been around, so it's probably outdated. But that report is pretty recent. The workforce health report is pretty recent, but yet the numbers are pretty similar. I think my friend got their information from the National Institute from Health, but don't quote me. I'm just trying to recall this discussion that happened, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, and the numbers was like in the 80s, 70s or 80s or something like that. And yes, the National Institute of Health is probably a reliable source. And I think, I'm not saying that the two sources that I have is better sources, but that's three different numbers. We're dealing with the doctors' years of living in their profession. Now also, doctors that don't guarantee their work. That book talk about, and this, because it's an old book, things have changed. I think the requirement to get your MD you will need more credits in nutritional studies. So you got to learn more about healthy foods, healthy lifestyles. So when this book came out, the requirements was minimum. So I can't say his foundings on a low level of requirements dealing with health for the MD professions is current with today's doctors, because I think they have moved up the standards to have more involvement in holistic lifestyle and eating more healthier and all that kind of stuff. So, but in my opinion, it's still very low. And I don't know what's the correct balance for a doctor to, because there's a lot of studying that you have to do, and there's a lot of, I want to say practicing, but you're practicing on people and trying to find that right fix for an individual. Everybody say all humans are the same, but I don't think all humans are going through the same problems. So you got this chronic problem and you don't have this chronic So there's going to be a different treatment plan for these individuals. So even though you're both humans. So, and then there's also, you have other research that talk about, because where you're from and your body type and blood type and all this stuff may be a factor in how you live and eat. So I don't know how accurate that stuff is. I do have books on that. I haven't really looked into them because you can't read everything. It's just a lot of stuff to read. So I do have books on these topics, but I haven't really examined them and fact checked them. And I have my own notes that I have to fact check and try to update and stuff. So it becomes a time-consuming project. The other thing, now I'm moving away from healthcare and I'm moving to this, the late Senator James Hammond. He was a Democrat. I want to say he's a senator, Democrat in South Carolina. He got credit for this theory called mud silk theory, if I'm pronouncing that right. Because I don't know if I even spelled it right, because my spelling was S-I-L-L. And somebody told me that was an incorrect spelling, but so that they might be right. I have to look it up later. But that theory that he came up with, or he pushed out or made it popular, suggests that social systems will always have to have a class of people to do the hard labor. So growing up in my neighborhood, living in an urban environment, we used to say, well, we used to hear it all through the neighborhood, that everybody can't be rocket scientists who would clean the poop. Not going to say the other word, but the poop. So we got exposed to that comment all the time. So they're letting you know that everybody can't be a scholar, everybody can't be a genius, everybody can't be at the highest level of humanity. So somebody has to do the regular stuff. You know, somebody got to take out the trash. So, but we just always hear it. Nobody really investigated where that came from or why people are saying that. But just to hear that this guy in the 1850s, or 1830s, 1850, around that time, he was saying that stuff. He also was a supporter of slavery. Now, I have a long list of individuals that talk like this, talking about eugenics, talking about being inferior, talking about all that kind of stuff. But why did this stuff matter is that all these people had influence in society. So we're talking about professors, scholars, inventors, pastors, president of universities, CEOs of corporations. They was in a position of power and influence, and they had these comments on different groups and stereotypes and typecasting and trying to put people in categories. So when you start to read a lot of stuff, you're going to run into these arguments and these comments to the point where it's going to affect your conscious mind, because you're constantly hearing all these people. You might look up to Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson might be a great man to you, but if you read a lot of his stuff, are not nice. So, well, I shouldn't even say not nice, but it's not accurate. So even though he's a learned individual, but a lot of this stuff is junk science or pseudo science. And what you supposed to do with that? You're going to say, that's my hero, and I got to throw all this stuff out because he got it wrong. So that's my argument. So I got a ton of list of famous people. And what I mean, I'm not talking about celebrities. I'm talking about people like politicians, doctors, lawyers, engineers, pastors, teachers, people of that group that have some really outlandish concepts. And when you start to cover all these topics, you start realizing it's a lot of bad information out there. And we always hearing these words like misinformation and disinformation, which I try to say that in my interpretation of these terms, misinformation is information that you have, but you're not sure if it's accurate. So you're giving it out because you're thinking it's accurate, but it's misinformation. Disinformation is intentionally giving you the wrong information and having it look like that's been studied and been proven is correct. So that's my definition of the two terms, misinformation and disinformation. One is more on a higher level and intentionally, and one is you ran with some information and you didn't do any research, you didn't any fact checks or anything, and it sound correct. So you ran with it. Now, I'm gonna bring up these two things because you heard it before. One is from Abraham Lincoln, and this was before the war. So let me skip through some of the He said, my first impulse would be to free all the slaves and send them to Liberia. And there was other locations people were trying to send descendants of the African group to their own native land. While Lincoln understood that at the time, these strategies probably wouldn't have worked out during the war or just before the war or after the war. But he did have those ideas in his head to send black people, which are descendant of Africa, to back. And it's tough to say where they came from because to be honest, melanated people, dominant melanated people, which means their skin tone is dark. That's what I mean. Everybody has melanin in them, but I'm saying dominated melanated people, which is dark-skinned individuals. There were melanated people in the United States before they were called United States. You have Ivan Van Sertima did some research, for one example, on finding skeleton remains, and I guess they did tests on it, and to see that individual or those individuals came from another location, mainly from Africa. Here, well, I'm kind of combining where I was going to go with. I shouldn't say they came from Africa, but the finding of these fossil remains showed that melanated dominated people were already in the United States. That's what I meant. But what I was trying to tie it in, that people did come from the continent of Africa to this country. And also they came from Europe, because Europe went into Africa, took individuals from Africa and brought them to Europe and socialized them into their culture. And then they sent them to this country. And then you already had melanated dominated people here. So that's 3 different routes to this country. But nobody want to talk about it. But if you take courses, which I would not recommend because the cost of these courses, but go to the seminars from these professors, I would recommend. Pay for those seminars and listen to them explain what I just explained. So when you go into anthropology, when you go into genetics, when you go into biology, and you go into all these studies or disciplines, they will explain all that stuff. They will really get into details that you won't believe. You're like, I don't believe that, what you just said. But these are people that spent a lot of their time researching this stuff. It doesn't mean that they're accurate or correct all the time. It just means they spent a lot of their life coming to a conclusion. And versus us, we read an article and run with it. And that's where misinformation comes. You get one source and it sound legit and you run with it. Now that was a paragraph, and I cut it short, from Abraham Lincoln. The other one is, and I read this previous shows, this is from President Johnson. And this is called the Withdrawal Speech, 1968, in Tennessee. If you can convince the lowest white man that he's better than the best colored man, he won't he won't notice that you're picking his pockets. And I'm gonna skip that because that's like profanity. He will give he's basically saying he will give money, his situation, they call it empty his pockets for you. So what he's pretty much saying, that you can manipulate him to believe you, and just for him to be superior to this other group of people, he would give money to you. And this is what and there's a little profanity in here, which I don't want to say and stuff, but it's pretty much saying that. But it's called the Withdrawal Speech of 1968 in Tennessee. President Johnson, the former President Johnson, was talking about how you can convince a white person that's struggling all their life that he's better than an accomplished, educated, wealthy black man. And that have him believe it so much that he can take money from you because you're so convinced that that information is correct. It's almost like what you're seeing going on right now. But you can figure that out. I don't need to go in depth on that. But I also mentioned that senator from Tennessee, and I want to say James Hammond. He was talking the same thing about society always will have individuals that will have to do the hard labor, the stuff that nobody else want to do and stuff. So you got people that believe in these concepts. Now, going back to some stuff that's happening in this country right now, I like to call the United States a economic zone. Some people like to call United States a corporation. Some people like to call it a country. I don't know how any of these terms are factual, but it is an economic zone. That's the best term for this society. And a lot of corporations are consolidating and eating up other businesses and becoming more powerful. And I think Clinton, Ronald Reagan, a bunch of people that changed some of the laws that was on the books that try to stop these formations of super corporations, or what you would call monopolies from your college courses and stuff. That this is going on, and it's out of hand. Like for instance, we know there's 4 corporations that control 80% of the meat supply, and that's broken down from meat is 80%. So I guess they're talking about red meat. Pork is 70%, and poultry is 60%. And 4 corporations that's dominating that market. And some of them not even American corporations. 6 corporations control the media. And I don't know if that's correct, but they've been consolidating and stuff. And when you think of the media, you're thinking about consumerism, entertainment, and propaganda. So they mix propaganda, entertainment, and consumer, because you always see ads running because that's what's paying for the airtime. And then they want you to buy stuff because it's a market economy. You stop buying stuff. That's why boycotts can be efficient, because if you stop buying, you're messing up the money. But you can take an economic or a business course and catch you up on that. Or listen to Professor Richard Wolff and Ralph Nader, or some of the guys that I said earlier. You can listen, they can catch you up to speed. I also mentioned 10 years ago, it was only 500 billionaires. And now today there's over 2,500. So something has got to the point where it's no longer level. It's uneven. Big oil companies. I'm getting this from Richard Wright. He was in the Clinton administration. He said big oil companies bought off Congress. And that's why you don't hear too much about any actions against climate change. He says that the NRA has bought off Congress, and there's no meaningful action against guns. Guns is a tough situation. But most of the people that's lobbying for the crazy gun stuff, the only thing I would probably be against is assault weapons. Because unless you're in the middle of nowhere, in a rural area, and you're being attacked by zombies, why would you need an AK-47 or something similar, an M16 or AR or a MAC-10 or Uzi? Why would you need that kind of weapon? Now, I don't even suggest a shotgun unless you're dealing with big animals like a grizzly bear. Because if you fire a shotgun based on the faulty material that these houses are built, that a lot of those bullets go right through the wall. So you may have a child sleeping in the next room and the bullet go right through the wall and kill the child. So I wouldn't even recommend a shotgun, but I would recommend a high caliber pistol that can have a like a 44, 357 Magnum, 10 millimeters, and those kind of weapons. Yeah, have it in the house. But these other weapons, special bullets, whether it's a black rhino or armor piercing or hollow points, and all kind of things that cause a lot of damage. I wouldn't lobby for that. Now, if you have gun clubs in your state and you just want to have that be accurate to shoot high volume of bullets at a target, then you go to the gun club and practice, and you leave the gun at the club. Yes, at home you got your pistols and your shotguns or your rifles or your long rifles, but your assault weapons, you leave it at the club. So that's where I'm flexible, but I'm against owning assault rifle unless you have a gun club. You're a member of a gun club that they have it locked at that location. It's not going home with you. And I don't want to get into stories about accidental shootings of your own children, or your own children get the gun and shoot themselves. And I'm talking about, and I'm not talking about your basic 22s. I'm talking about high caliber weapons that somehow your children got their hand on it and they shot themselves. So that's why I have a problem with it. But I don't have a problem with you owning a gun, but I would like some training and some other things that allow you to have your right to bear arms. Now, also Robert Wright also talked about insurance companies. They bought off Congress. That's why you have no actions, real actions against healthcare. So the name of this article that he wrote was Money in Politics, January the 8th this year on Facebook. So that's where I got that information on, which everybody know that the donor class are buying off the politicians. The rich people is just doing too much. You used to be able to go to a stadium, and the stadium was just called the team that the stadium's for. Now every stadium and arena has a corporation. You know, you go down to Harvard, you have XL Center. That's a corporation. Used to be called the Harvard Civic Center. You go to the Dallas, well, it's not even Dallas, but the surrounding area of the Dallas Cowboys. That's AT&T Stadium. You know, when do football players make telephones? So, they're dominating everything. So I want to get back to 4 major pillars of resistance. And I'm bringing that up because these are the traditional things that push back against monopolies. It push back against the working class trying to have a decent income to support their family and be able to buy a house, get to work, and have some savings so they can retire. One is the universities. 2 is nonprofits. 3 is media outlets, which to me that's suspect. And the last is labor. And when I say labor, I'm talking about unions. I have stats on unions, but I didn't bring it. But the amount of declines in unions that's fighting for your living wages and other things that unions, health at the job and things what unions fight for, the numbers used to be in the thousands. And I don't want to give you a date, but at one time you had over 4,000 unions in the United States. Today, 2025, nowhere near 4,000 unions. So they've been dismantling unions on a regular basis. And nothing is perfect. Obviously, unions take money and do other things with the money that you didn't ask the union to do, because it's not perfect. When you have a bunch of money and you're saying, well, we can do this and help another cause, you're going to do that. Yet you didn't ask the people that's paying dues, can you do that? Maybe the union should ask their workers that's paying the dues, can we do this with the money? So that's interesting. And the 4 major pillars of resistance is what that is about, is the groups that's going to do the groups that's doing pushback. And when I said the media outlets, I'm mainly thinking about independent media, or I'm talking about media that's not solely supported by corporations, because we know the corporations are people, right? And corporations have their hands in everything. They have their hand in healthcare. They have their hands in politics. They have their hands in science. So they're just they have the money, and then they're screwing everything up. I also want to mention that dealing with the prison system, and I'm covering a lot of stuff because you never know if you ever have enough time to cover this stuff. You just can't imagine that you have all this time in the world to do all this stuff. So I just try to jam everything in one shot. In California, the inmates are used to fight the wildfires, and they get paid $5.80. My thing is, while you're fighting wildfires, and I don't know if you have any experience with fire. Fire is a tricky thing. And so if you're trying to contain it, you're risking your life. It's almost like going into a firefight in the military. And there's a chance that you're going to get shot. And if you fight in fire, there's a chance that you're going to get burned. So you might not have any compassion for the inmates, but I don't think you should use inmates. And if you are going to use the inmate to fight wildfires, you should pay them more. And you should drop their time in prison unless they're a serial murderer. Then I don't expect a break. But if you're just in there for shoplifting, I think you should get a break. Also in Georgia, one of the legislators in Georgia was trying to get undocumented immigrants to be deported. And so they just ran out of the state of Georgia, and they left all these crops which they were picking for the company they were working for, and they left. So Georgia ended up going to the prison system to have inmates pick these peaches and whatever crops are grown in Georgia. Again, we're using inmate, or you can call it slave laborers, to accommodate these corporations. Also in Alabama, if an inmate die in Alabama prison system, their body is sent to the University Alabama Medical School without their consent. So you got all this stuff. So I just gave you 3 examples, but you can't imagine all across the country what they're doing with inmates. We know the history of Holmberg Prison, I think that's in Pennsylvania, where they test poisonous chemicals on the inmates for exchange of shortening their prison stay. And a lot of those inmates came down with serious diseases, and they're trying to sue the government. So I still got a bunch of things, but my time is up, and I'm glad that you spent some time listening to me. Also to tell you that today there's a protest at the federal building in Hartford, and it's, I guess, Free Palestinians rally. Also tomorrow, there's veterans protesting at the state capitol. I think that's at 1 o'clock. So you got some protests that you can join, and I'm not advocating, but you got to do something. Whether you join an organization or you protest or you boycott or you fight the power, you got to do something. And medically, I don't want you to forget about the measles. Certain states are being hit. The only state I can think of on the top of my head is Texas. But you also have an outbreak of monkeypox also. So these are contagious diseases you should be aware of in just in this country. So I want everybody to have a remaining good day and just try to navigate the system and try to contribute positively to making it a better country.
This is Bristol Health Cares. Special thanks to Nutmeg TV. It's a nonprofit organization. An organization that's going through some difficult times right now and needs your support. Many of you out there have cut the cable, as I have cut the cable, and a lot of the funding that took place for nonprofit stations like Nutmeg TV throughout the state of Connecticut, as people transition from cable TV to the other methods of getting their content, the funding has gone down and down and down. And so programs like this, like you're seeing today, and the programs that you watch on Nutmeg TV, may not be there in the future if we don't all rally behind them and help them with our support to the extent that we can. So have a wonderful day, and until the next time, this is Kurt Barwis, President and CEO of Bristol Health, signing off.
Sometimes life just happens. Don't worry. Farmington Motorsports will get you back on the road and at a fair price. From towing to tires, emissions to transmissions.
Our ASC certified techs do it all.
Farmington Motorsports is a family-run business. We're a Napa Auto Center and AAA approved. We work on all makes and models, from preventative maintenance to major repairs.
And every repair is backed by our 2-year, 24,000-mile nationwide warranty.
When life happens to you, don't worry. Farmington Motorsports.